Welcome to the Sapphic World Book Club.
Thanks for having me.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, Jade, go.
All right. I do just want to take a minute. I said this kind of at the beginning. I know that this can be a really heavy subject matter for people, and I think, Natalie, based on some social media posts, there's a lot of your own experience in this. So we're probably going to get a lot of questions, and I know it can get kind of heavy. Please, if you get a question that you're not comfortable answering, just let us know, and we'll be happy to kind of edit that out of the final. We want to make sure everybody feels safe and comfortable, with what they're sharing and talking about here. So we appreciate you being here and appreciate you writing this book. So thanks for being here. And I will say one of the questions that we talked about at the end and also got posed, I believe, online or submitted ahead of time by Carrie is, why did you choose YA for this story? And why do you think that was the best category for it?
Mm. Um, I think that I was thinking through my childhood and especially how I could have understood myself a lot better, a lot sooner, if I had come across queer fiction sooner, because queer fiction has been so important to me. So it just seemed like the right setting for that. And also because my journey has been as an adult deconstructing and thinking about my childhood so much, which I think makes for a more boring book. Like just me sitting here thinking, than actually stuff happening was kind of my thought process for that.
That makes sense. It was there was a lot of action in this book that drove the story. So I can see that um being a good setting to put it in. Um,
Hmm.
you brought up queer fiction, and I think we were all amused with the reference to One Last Stop. I know that I particularly appreciated that, knowing that you narrated it and that this was your story. Why did you pick that particular book, and does it have significance to you? And what was the meaning behind that for you?
Yeah, that was actually the first book. Well, I had narrated some like not Indian, indie lesfic for a while, and I was really, really drawn to those stories, and I wasn't sure why. And then I slowly started coming out to myself. And as I was trying to figure out where I wanted my audiobook narrating career to go, I was looking for books that I wanted to narrate. And I saw that Casey McQuiston had One Last Stop coming out, and it looked like a great fit. And that was actually the first time that I typed out in an email to the producer, can I please audition? I'm bisexual. Um, and it was actually not until after I sent that email that I talked to my husband about it. I was like, I guess I should tell him since I'm emailing it to people now. Um, yeah, so it was significant for me as part of my coming out, and I really wish that I had a book like that earlier in my life because I just had no examples of anybody being bisexual or being joyfully queer or anything like that in my childhood. So it meant a lot to me.
Yeah, it's a great book, and I love that you included it in the story. And it feels a little bit more special now knowing that you kind of had that connection with it. That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
I have a question from Jackie in the chat. She says, what is your biggest takeaway you want your readers to walk away with? And who did you want to reach specifically with this story?
Mm. I think I especially wanted to reach out to people who grew up with a lot of homophobia and religious trauma, people who grew up like me, and to kind of reach out to our child selves and say, hey, you're good. It wasn't your fault. You're perfect the way you are. And I really felt like I was trying to kind of hug my inner child. Um, and I hope that it felt like a hug and healing to anyone else who grew up with religious trauma around homophobia, especially.
What would have happened if you had this book while growing up?
You know, I don't know. Um, I it could have been something that changed my life, or it could have been something that I read that seemed scandalous and I thought was absolutely just garbage. And I burned in my backyard and then thought about for years and then came out to myself later. I really have no idea because I was very devoutly religious as a child. Like I was raised so immersed in that culture and I didn't know anything outside of it, um, that I was very devout. And I was trying to like evangelize people and hand out tracts to strangers. And so I don't know for sure if it would have changed my life immediately or if it would have taken years to sink in. Um, Hard to say.
Well, we've been talking at the book club, of course, and we had a few comments of people saying, I would have wished I had this book sooner. And that's why
Mm,
it's so important that it's a a book, because
mm,
there are kids living this experience. So thank you
yeah.
for writing it.
Yeah. Thank you all for reading it. It means a lot to me.
I've got a question from Elizabeth. She says, from someone who grew up in a conservative Christian homeschooling background, what's the best way we can get books like yours into the hands of kids who need them? I wish I'd had a book like this growing up.
You know, I wish I knew the answer to that. I don't know. Um, I really wish that we had stuff like this in libraries. I know that people like really fight to get it taken out, but that's a place that kids can come across books. Um, I don't know what the answer is, but if any of you know a kid who needs it and you need to rip a cover off, I fully support.
Even though it's
Um,
so pretty, the cover.
It is a pretty cover. I kind of wish that I could have made like a discreet cover, you know, for kids who need one without a clearly gay cover. So if anyone needs to redecorate it, I support.
Good. I have a question from Jamie. What was the hardest part of the book to write, given that it's partially based on your own experience?
It was definitely the heavy family stuff and the guilt. And I tried to go light on the self-hatred, and kind of move through it, but that's such a heavy thing to sit with. I know that when I first wrote it and I had some people read it and then it was on sub, some of the feedback that I got was that it could be darker, like it could be heavier and more dramatic. And I understand like from a commercial aspect that it doesn't feel like the cult drama that people are expecting, where like people are locked up in the basement and drinking Kool-Aid and stuff. But it's very real life for me. It is the environment that I grew up in. And I really wanted to portray it accurately and gently because for those of us who grew up that way, it's traumatic enough. It doesn't need more drama. It needs to be very gentle. Like reflecting on that stuff is very heavy. So I tried to write it as gently and hopefully as I could. And I was really happy to self-publish it, um, because I wanted to maintain control over that and not have to change my story to make it more mass appealing. I especially wanted it to be for those of us who needed a kind of gentle way to think through things.
yeah, absolutely. How long did it take you to write the book from kind of the concept and actually starting to getting it published?
I think like a year and a half from when I started writing it. I think I wrote it in maybe like 6 months, 9 months. Um, I had tried to write a memoir first, like a really angry, ranty memoir, and it was just not like something for public consumption. And then I was like, what if I fictionalize this? And that felt much more like it gave me freedom to explore things in a different way and to write a story that wasn't exactly mine. Um, and where no one was actually like an exact person. So I didn't feel like I was calling out specific people. I kind of smushed people together. Um, And then because I did go on sub traditionally, and I got an agent and it didn't sell. I got some feedback that if I wanted to rewrite it, people would consider publishing it. And that's when I decided to just go ahead and self-publish it. So it was quick because I did end up doing it myself.
That makes sense. You mentioned in your answer to the last question, the hope, and I feel like that really did stand out to me as one of the things that I mentioned in the book club portion. Is that even as dark as it does get, and as there are a couple times that I took a break from listening because it was just really intense, and you can feel some of the things that are coming, and you know that it's gonna hurt. But I felt like my takeaway from the book as a whole was that even when it is that dark, that there is still hope and that there is a way out.
Mhm.
And I definitely feel like that came through. So I
I'm
was
so
glad to
glad.
hear you mention the hope in that too.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm so glad.
yeah,
I have a
Caroline?
yeah, I have a comment from Lena. She says, "I will be putting a copy of this book in my little library that is in my front
Hmm.
yard for the neighborhood." So
Oh, yay. Thank
yeah,
you.
maybe put two, like one with and one without the cover. And Jackie says, as a writer, how do you balance writing about painful experiences from your past with also giving yourself space to heal? How do you pace the process of creating this important work while taking care of yourself?
Yeah, I feel like I wrote it when I was ready to heal from it, not at like the height of my hurt, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, and I did try to write it as a healing journey, moving through the pain instead of like sitting with it, which I mean, I do privately and in my own life and continue to do, but I really tried to be moving through it in the book. I know that wrote this book a lot more personal than most writers are comfortable with. When I did my book release party event in New York with Casey actually and Cassandra Kaw, the first question Cassandra asked me was, "How did you like keep yourself safe and like from writing something too personal?" And I was like, "I don't think I did. I wrote something incredibly personal." um, but because I record so many books and I read so many books, the stuff that I want to read is the really personal stuff that like nobody else could have written, very specific to this person. And I feel like there are so many books in the world and so many people who write so beautifully that I just wanted to put out something that was very personal to me, that was the thing that I felt like I had to write, if that makes sense.
And about personal, I mean, of course, you narrated your own book. Was it
Hmm.
um, difficult to make that decision, or did you even think about another narrator doing it?
I knew for sure that I wanted to do it because it is such a personal story. It felt like it had to be my voice telling it. But it did take me time to write it and to record it. I really was gentle to myself and gave myself extra time because it is so personal and very emotional for sure.
I think that's what I listened to the audio because I was like, okay, if she wrote it, she reads it, I listen to it.
Mm,
But it's, I think that that's what makes it extra special somehow. I mean, knowing that it's your story partially, uh,
mm,
that makes it so good, I think.
thank you.
Um, Jay, do you have another question? Because I have a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got somebody that wants to know about your writing process as a debut author. If you did a lot of planning for this and just kind of what your writing process looked like.
Mm. I just kind of wrote a rough outline and then I would just write more detailed outline for the next chapter and then write it out. I do tend to write very sparsely. I'm um, kind of brief with words. So I had to keep adding to it because I would read a chapter and be like, this isn't a chapter, this is a detailed outline, and then keep adding more to it. But I don't consider myself like a writerly writer. I have not written a lot of books. I just feel like this one just kind of came from my heart and um, it was messy. I don't think that my technique is anything for anybody else to try to follow.
Um, we've talked to a lot of authors, and I think a lot of authors probably feel like their technique is pretty messy. So I think that's
Okay. Oh, good. I'm in good
not,
company then.
yeah, you're in good company. Do you think that you'll keep writing then? Do you think this is something that you'll continue to do?
We need
I
a
think so.
sequel.
I don't know about a sequel. I do write for my Patreon that I run with my girlfriend. Those are different stories, but they're all sapphic and spicy, and that's a fun way for me to keep writing. I do like the short story format because it's less pressure, it's less serious, it's just more fun. I do think that I have at least one more novel that I would like to write. I think I would like to write a polyamory romance because that's
Okay.
kind of a journey that my life has taken that I didn't see it going on, and that is super meaningful to me. Um, but that might be the only other one that I have in mind.
Okay. Well, we'll see if more ideas pop up after that one. You never know. Maybe they'll keep coming.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
I'm going back to the sequel. Because we've been talking in the book club and people said like, okay, the story as it is ends on a way that keeps you wanting to see how they deal with everything that happened and how
Hmm.
they actually get to a point where, they've dealt with most of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and someone said maybe that's even more important or as important as reading about getting out of a cult,
Mm.
but more about, okay, what next?
The
What do I
recovery
do? The
process.
recovery. Yeah.
Mm.
Would that be something that might be happening?
I really don't have plans for it. And I think that the reason that I left it so kind of open-ended is because I wanted it to be hopeful. Um, but it's more of a like wish of how things would go. Like, I feel like things are not going to always be easy. And I don't think that their families are going to behave themselves the way that we hope they would, based on my own personal experience. Um, but I I did want to end it hopeful with kind of like how I wish my parents would end up, where I hope that they would end up, but they haven't yet. So I don't know if I'm ready to write about that.
I can't imagine that. That's true. Let me see. Jen has a question. She says, I'm interested in if the writing about religion and their actions were embellished or pretty accurate.
I think it's pretty accurate based on my childhood. Yeah. As people that I knew and families that I knew and things that I observed, I thought it was quite um, restrained, actually. I think that families can get a whole lot darker than I even wrote in real
Okay.
life. Yeah.
You've given a few examples about basements and Kool-Aid and whatever. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't have the same experiences and I was pretty shocked already. So,
Mm.
um, let's see. Jackie's asking, would you be open to a movie or TV adaptation of this book? And who would you cast as Valerie and Riley?
Mm. I mean, I would love to sell movie rights. It's hard to know who to cast. I guess it would have to be somebody kind of like unknown and young because the characters are so young. And by the time I know who anybody is, they're not young anymore. So I can't cast it.
Maybe they can give you some advice. Let's see. Um, do you have another question, Jade?
I have one in the chat. Is what are your other author inspirations, sapphic or otherwise?
Mm. I really love Lee Winter is a well-known lesbian fiction author. They're wonderful. I enjoy Casey McQuiston. I really love Nevo. I don't know if you all have read. It's Nghivo. They wrote The Chosen and the Beautiful. I've done a couple of their books. I'm trying to remember the other one. Really, really wonderful writer. Um, yeah, I feel like I take some inspiration from all the authors I record their books, and I'm really, really lucky that I record some of the best books being written, in my opinion. I really love my job.
Are there any you would turn down?
I do turn down books for sure. Um, I have like a little list that I like copy paste, especially when indie authors email me, because those tend to be some of the more stuff surprises me that comes up because it hasn't gone through like trad pub editing. But I did turn down a book last year that was traditionally published. It's stuff that is a hard line for me. So it's like um, glorified incest, bestiality, stuff that feels like rapey, but not shown that way. Like really dark romance has a lot of kind of glorified sexual assault, stuff like that. I do say no to. There was a book last year I said no to that was did very well when it was published, but it had a lot of grooming and stuff that I just did not feel comfortable with, especially the way that it was portrayed as being cool.
That makes sense. I'm curious as far as narration goes, how you got started in that, and kind of what your process has been from, when you started to where you are now, how that's gone for you. Just a little insight into that would be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I was an opera singer. I have my master's degree in opera, and it's hard to make money performing for a kind of dying art form. So I taught a lot of music lessons. I was a church organist. I worked for high schools. I did all kinds of random music jobs. And I was getting tired of not feeling like I had like a well-paying, respected career. I was kind of cobbling together so many things and it wasn't paying great. And I was going to go back to school to do something different, maybe like dental hygiene or medical sonography or something. Um, and I listened to a lot of audiobooks. I've always been an audiobook listener, and especially I was in all of these kind of crappy opera productions, and I was driving all the time to rehearsals, listening to audiobooks, and it just occurred to me to Google it and realized that people were doing it at home now and didn't have to live in LA or New York. And I just bought the equipment and started doing it. I did a bunch of indie books and then went and made connections with publishers. Um, I've been really lucky, and I've also tried to kind of direct my career towards the kind of stuff that I want to be recording. And I feel like it's worked out great. I really like the kinds of stuff that I mostly get these days.
That's awesome. Caroline, I think you've got some more questions.
Yeah, I have one. If you have back to the book, if you have any advice for people in your own or Vel situation for those who may watch this on YouTube.
Who in the situation of the book or who want
Yeah.
to be narrators?
No,
Oh,
the book.
yeah. I think the most important thing is to find your found family, which is the people who love you the way that you are and like actually love you and support you and don't think that you're broken. Um, it's hard to heal and to love yourself when you're surrounded by people telling you that you're wrong.
Essential, I think. I have another one from Drew. Riley is one of Val's earlier my English. Riley is one of Val's earliest supporters, allies in the book, and from what I remember, the earliest link in her support system. How was it like including that kind of support and connection in the romance and Val's life when her story is so personal to you, but also different?
Mm. I do feel like falling in love when I was in college changed my life because it felt so good and it felt so different from what I had been told that love was supposed to be. The kind of love that I grew up with felt controlling and um, judgmental and stressful. And I was told that that was like the peak of love, and nobody else knew what love was. And only we understand love here in church and in our home. And leaving home and falling in love and realizing how good and easy and right it felt really made me question everything that I had been taught. Trying to remember what the question was, but that I was inspired by that idea that feeling real love can be so healing and um, can also throw into question everything else that we've been told is love.
Exactly. Let's see. Jackie has another question. I'm mindful of the time. Do you have a few more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Jackie says, "What are your thoughts on the trad wife trend on TikTok?"
Trad wife.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. People do whatever to get attention. Um, I guess it is weird to see something that I feel like I escaped being glamorized. That is weird,
Yeah,
for sure.
and might be painful, I can imagine.
Yeah, I guess maybe I do kind of avoid that stuff. It does pop up sometimes, but it's super weird to me because I feel like I escaped that. That was the life that was envisioned for me, so I don't understand why people are choosing that. But it's their choice. I hope they're happy. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure that would bring up a lot of complicated feelings for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I've got a question from Jude. You narrate a lot of mainstream books, but you ended up deciding to self-publish. Were you at any point made to feel less than? A lot of indie authors, like J.J. Arias, for example, are very successful, yet keep being told that their books are good, quote, for indie books. Has this
Mm.
been your experience, or have you been spared?
I would say it's mixed. And I don't know how much of it came from like inside me and how much of it was from outside. I definitely felt kind of self-conscious that I had self-published and that maybe people were looking down on me or respecting it less, but I don't know. Everyone was really nice to me. And I especially appreciated all of the traditionally published Sapphic authors who were so supportive of me and did events with me and just fully supported my release. Um, so in general, I feel really good about it. And I feel like I'm glad that I had so much control over my story and what I wanted to say, and I didn't have to change it to make it more commercial. And I feel like generally, I felt good about it. I did do some events where I felt like the indie authors were maybe inadvertently treated as less important than the traditionally published authors. But in general, especially from the authors themselves who helped me so much and did events with me, I felt so supported and appreciative.
That's awesome. I've got kind of a fun one that's a little off topic. Elizabeth wants to know, what's your favorite opera from a fellow opera lover and music degree haver?
I used to say Tosca was my favorite opera. And in fact, I had a cat named Tosca. It just feels like an action movie. It's like fast paced and everybody dies. I don't know. I just loved it.
That's fun. I think Caroline's got one last question to close us out.
Yeah, I do. Just a little bit on the lighter side. Um, if you were to get stuck on a island without anyone, but one of your characters, which one would it be? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just thinking. That's like a really hard question.
Oh, it's supposed to be fun.
Oh, that's a hard hypothetical. I guess maybe the sweater vested librarian. I feel
Mm.
like we would have a great time. Yeah.
That is the best choice. I did not expect that one. And I agree wholeheartedly. Um, I want to say thank you. Thank you very much for your openness and your being here, making time to talk to us about everything we've talked about. I hope you had a good time.
I did. Thank you so much.
Is
Thanks
there
for
any
having me.
question that we didn't ask that you would have loved to have been asked or answered?
I don't think so. No. I just hope that any of you who grew up with any religious trauma or shame. I hope that you just know that you are beautiful and perfect. And I hope you surround yourself with people who believe that too.
Really quick, Natalie, if people are not following you yet, where can we find you?
Yeah, just at Natalie Naudus on TikTok, Instagram, everywhere.
Everywhere. Okay, that's
Yeah.
easy.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.